man. How does one talk about this in a way that would sound okay? So, there are some, I suppose, temperaments or personality types. For some strange reason, the moment they come out of their mother's womb, they just happen to be rebellious. I don't know why that is. They probably have a couple of missing screws. And they're the sort of types where they have a tendency of internalizing experiences, but not being completely satisfied. They don't respect other people as much. They have this, I suppose, mysterious longing, yearning, sadness to them. And they read a lot of books, perhaps. Maybe they go to workshops. Maybe they watch a lot of YouTube. But for some strange reason, it doesn't provide much nourishment. And there comes a point where they say, nothing works. You know, I think about, for example, the story of not so much Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha, but Siddhartha himself about 2,500 years ago. There are lots of people who just live life and they're relatively happy and content and accept life for what it is. They get married, it's an arranged marriage, they have children, and even though it's not the most pleasant of experiences, the first 40, 50 years of parenthood, eventually they'll come to accept, this is how their kids are, this is the sacrifices they had to make, and they haven't turned out too bad. So there is a good category of people who are just yes people. They go to work even though they know it's to some extent they're being exploited on a daily basis. They don't really make much money, but they don't really much care, I suppose. They're comfortable with their lot in life. Siddhartha, on the other hand, some 3,000 years ago, I don't really know what his problem was. I don't know what the problem was for Jesus. I don't know. I mean, I can understand Moses a little bit. But some people are just unruly, and they're just born that way. And they're very creative, though. They're very creative, very insightful. They are, in fact, the visionaries of humankind. Without them, we wouldn't have a Sigmund Freud. We wouldn't have a Carl Jung. We wouldn't have a Socrates. We wouldn't have a Plato. So, who and what you are is usually compared to the great human beings that humanity creates or history creates. So, for some odd reason, we value people who are a little bit broken the moment they're born. The problem with, I suppose, coming out a little bit broken is that you have to go out there. And because there's a great amount of vengeance or disrespect inside you for things out there, and you say, the only way I can learn anything is through my own experiences in life. And that's what Siddhartha does, in not only some 3,000 years ago, but also in Hermann Hesse's book, where from a very early on he says, I can't learn from my father. If my father had wisdom, why would he want to go to church every Sunday, for example? If my father had wisdom, why would he want to continue to read books? Why would he want to sit at teachers' feet and listen to what they have to say? If wisdom lives inside you, then there is no reason for you to go to church, read any books. You should accept and kind of just go through your life the way wisdom demands of you. And so it begins to become very, very doubtful of everything under the sun. And you don't find very many people like that. Eventually, all of us in this class will find an oasis of sorts. But not the unruly kinds, not the introverts. And the problem with introverts is that ultimately when they complete the journey, will come back and turn out to be exactly like the yes person. The only difference is that the yes person doesn't have very many experiences under his belt, whereas the no person has a lot of experience, lots of insight, lots of creativity, but at the end, they very much both resemble the same, resemble each other in many ways. What is interesting about Siddhartha's novel, or Hermann Hesse's novel, is that near the end of the book, he comes to realize, hello, Abi. Hello, Kendra. He comes to realize that there is nothing wrong with just being able to love your kids, getting married, having a job, just enjoying the sunset or the sunrise. It's really, really quite wonderful. And that's really the only difference. The only difference is that the no person has to go through this long journey to get his head banged up against the wall a couple of times, to get to a place of, I suppose, a solitary place where there's a good amount of darkness and confusion and anger, and then there is acceptance. And then they'll go back into life. I'm not quite sure how best they can survive going back into life. You know, what little I know of some of the heroes that humanity has created, they have a really, really difficult time. Coming back, getting married, having children, having a 9-to-5 job, just chit-chatting with regular common people about regular common things. So that's really the best answer I can give you. In regards to you and your sister or brother or sibling, one is born whole like you. You just like to please your parents. You love them. To some extent, you fear disappointing them. Your sibling doesn't really care. You know, she probably, like Wolf there, finds birth to be a complete condemnation. And you want to escape from it. So when it comes Halloween, you pretend to be dead. Because, you know, you don't really know why you were born in the first place. And so you read a lot of books only to find yourself disappointed in ink on paper. You run into a lot of teachers. You say yes to all of them. You do rituals, you do ceremonies. You get your brain washed by them to some extent. Then you realize that's also no good, that no one really can teach you. And then you just sit somewhere. And if you're lucky, you'll have a breakthrough. There's an opening. You begin to have some glimpses about who you are, what you are. To some extent, some relative ounces of foundation of life, and then you just go back into life and live your life with a good amount of regret. It would have been nice if the New Testament story would go on to tell us what happens between the two brothers and what happens to the no brother. Does he get married? Is he able to survive a marriage? Will he have kids? How disappointed will he be about his kids? You know, and that is left really to our own imaginations. I don't really know if it's worth being broken. I don't know if it's worth having a teacher that will break you, where you're baptized internally, that all the things you used to believe in are no longer there, and you have to kind of live in this desert for a while to figure things out, first through your teacher, then through yourself. And then you come back, and when you come back, you don't really find very many things in life that are worth pursuing. You're left with just a couple of items on your shelf. I mean, right now when you go to Costco, you can actually enjoy the shop. It's a huge store with lots of items. It's wonderful. You know, but when you come back from your trip, this long intellectual, spiritual quest, when you go to Costco, they have a lot of things, but nothing really captures your interest. And I don't really know if it's worth taking that particular journey. Because at the end, what you really want is a companion sitting next to you, laying next to you, a couple of kids who are able to keep their mouth shut and just be there like statues, and once in a while you can tickle them and have a good time. And make sure that you die in your sleep. And you can't fix the software. If you're born broken, that's how you are. And if you're born like you, that's how you are. No one had to tell my brother when we went to India at the age of 11 to light a candle and study. But he did. He's had a very, very smooth life. Some ups and downs, but for the most part, very, very, very smooth. He's very responsible. I mean, you should see the way he teaches his classes. You know, he reads all the time. He does research all the time. And when he goes to classes like that, and he teaches also computer science. So when he goes to his classes teaching sociology or psychology, he just throws out all this information. You know, I, on the other hand, am a complete mess. I don't change my shirt, my t-shirt, my underwear, my socks. I just don't care. And when I go to meetings, I just fight. Why? I don't really know. Have I tried to tame myself, civilize myself a little? A little, yeah. Has it worked? No. So, so eventually you just give up. You say, this is the way I am. But should your sibling get his or her act together after like 20, 30 years, you will find yourself very envious of him or her because they will have some creativities or insights that are absent in you. And that's because of the journey that they had to take. You can be in a good marriage for 50 years, but someone who goes through 5 marriages, they have insights you will never have. But is it worth you going through 5 marriages and having 25 kids? I don't know. If you're Dr. Phil and you have a big stage, maybe. Yeah. Terry, yes.
You feel like 20 or 30 years of free? It's a little bit.
That's if you're lucky. Yeah, a lot of people get broken and they end up homeless or in some institute. There's a good amount of luck that's involved. The word happiness, it comes from the word hap. It just means luck. And it's just luck, it's fate. And I don't know how it's written. I don't know why it's the way it is. جام می خون دل هر یک به کسی دادن در دایره قسمت اوضاع چنین باشد. When human beings were born, some were given joy, some were given sorrow, some were given wholeness, some were given brokenness. That's how destiny was written. And there isn't much you can do about it. At least I don't think.
So number of 20 to 30 years is more like your random number?
It's a random number, of course. If you're working with someone, there's always a shortcut. Teachers are like GPS. If I have been drunk and I went through recovery and you're drunk and you want to go through recovery, I have been to places you haven't yet. I have been drunk, that we share in common. I came to realize I am an alcoholic. That hasn't cemented inside you just yet. And because of my disease, my wife left me. Your husband's still there. My kids hate me. Your kids are still loving you because they're trying to fix you up a little bit. You have certain routines that I no longer have. And I know what it means to be addicted to certain things. I know what it means to have something, lose them, get really, really depressed, be suicidal, humble myself a little, to go to AA, stand up, and to some extent courageously say, my name is Amir Sabzavari, I am an alcoholic. And for the first time you realize, well, you're far too incompetent, too insufficient to do this on your own, you need help. These are the things that I have gone through, but you haven't. You can go through this yourself. You can go a couple of weeks without drinking and then relapse. And if you continue doing this on your own, it's probably going to take you about 15, 20, 30, 40 years to recover. If, on the other hand, you do as I say, then instead of waiting for 30 years to recover completely, and that's never really complete, it'll take you maybe 5 years. So you will suffer less. The only difficulty is one of the 7 deadly sins, pride, always gets in the way. Autonomy, individuality, creativity. You actually assume that listening to me is harmful to you because you want to live your own life. You want to do things the way that fits you, your life, your temperament, your personality, right? So because I see things that you can't, it's going to be, we have to both meet at really just the right time where what I say goes inside you and you just accept. Because if it's going to be a wrestling match, there's a good chance after a few days I'm just going to give up and walk away. And then you'll be left on your own. So a good amount of luck really has to do with me and you finding each other just at the right time. Where you're about to go into the pits, I am slowly coming out. You're open to possibilities, and I have the seeds to kind of just inject into that soil and then protect it. Without that, in this day and age, given all the distractions, it's going to be relatively difficult. Yeah. Aaron? Forgive me. Yeah.
Why is it so difficult to put the concept of in our brains? Like, regarding that, I think it's lacking in other ways.
One of the guys who does really well with words, with language, and I don't really like him that much. His name is Jordan Peterson. He's a Canadian psychologist. He used to teach, I think, at University of Toronto psychology. He's got some lectures out there. I think a 17 or 25 part series on personality types. They're really, really good. He recently, according to my brother, with whom I spoke this morning, he had a conversation with Richard Dawkins about God's existence and Jesus and all of that. But the point is not so much whether he's right or wrong, good or bad, but the way he kind of puts his experiences, his thoughts, and his emotions into language. And you have to kind of look at this as a piece of art, that to master, to become proficient in any art, you need a good amount of practice. And so what perhaps, first, before you engage in anything, there has to be a good amount of passion inside you, curiosity. But I really want to just sit and explore this. Why is it so difficult? Let's just say I piss you off. I make you really, really angry. And you raise your hand to complain, but as the words come out of your mouth, you begin to fumble all over the place. And that adds more to your frustration, which enrages you, okay? Now, there are a couple of things that usually happen. When we find ourselves in those moments, you just give up. You just say, you know what, can I just ask my question on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday? I say, fine, you know. But the other path that you can take is we'll ask these people to remain quiet for a while and be patient, and we'll give you the next hour and 15 minutes to keep trying. And it's really like creating music and going back, listening to it, adding things to it, removing things from it. And you got to do it over and over and over again. I remember when we used to go to studios to record music, you would only pay for like a couple of hours. And for us way back in the 1980s, every hour cost us about $100. Okay? And we were all students. And most of us, immigrants, illegal status, we had zero money, but we found a way to steal things, sell them, and make some money to go to the studio and record things. And sometimes a 2-hour recording would turn into a 6-hour recording. And that's what you have to do. Emotions are really, really complicated because they deal a good amount with history. You also have emotions because you live in a social environment, so you have to have a good understanding of your social environment. You must also understand your own temperament, because what usually happens, an experience comes your way from society, from politics, from some source out there. Okay, it's an imposition, and it impacts you negatively or positively. A lot of feelings are generated, emotions are created, some buttons inside you are pushed, and then your thoughts begin to kind of become activated. And then your hand goes up, and now remember what you want to do now. You want to put your history, social history, political history, the presence of these people, okay, the energy of the space, the limitations of your own intellect, your experiences, and your limited vocabulary. You want to put all of that by raising your hand and saying, by the way, you upset me because you said A, B, C, D. You're talking about a footnote. And if you want this footnote to be expanded to become the body of the question, well, you need to fumble. You need to make a lot of mistakes for a long, long time until you get it right. You know, and when you get to the level of curiosity and interest, something really awful happens to you where you realize, and with a good amount of self-reflection and introspection, you really want to express what lives inside you in the most perfect way possible. And that can lead to paralysis, because you have to accept the limitations of language, you have to accept the limitations of you saying something and me hearing it the right way. There is this poet that we have, and many of you in this class have heard of him. His name is Rumi, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi Balkhi. And the first line in his Masnavi, his 6-volume book, is Bishnu az ne chun hikayat mikonad. Listen to the reed flute as it's trying to tell you a story. I don't know how you can listen and listen well. When my parents came here in 1985 and they looked at me, they were very disappointed. I wasn't going to school. I wasted all of their money. And then one day I courageously and stupidly, of course, went to the car wash, looked my mom in the eyes and said, I'm dropping out of school. And my mom sat and cried. And I said, I don't really care. Now, did my mom give me a pep talk? Absolutely. Did I know anything about immigrant life? No, I was a kid. Did I know anything about my parents leaving their culture, their heritage, their land, their people, their relatives, siblings, parents, to come here taking care of two lousy kids? I didn't know. Did I understand what it means to be a man of 50, coming to this foreign place and washing cars? I didn't know any of that. Did I know the value of money? No. And the truth is, my parents didn't have the language or the reflective abilities to express all of those things. And even if they did, I was far too young to understand anything that they would say. So even though you may be Jesus Christ, Aaron, and you may be able to express things really, really well, if you don't have ears who are ready to hear the things you gotta say, it's a waste. Now here's the thing, even if you were to speak perfectly, when you speak to me, my job is not to understand you, because I can't be in your shoes. The only thing you hope for me, something inside me to happen, is for me to feel. Nobody starts by thinking and reflecting, you just feel. Your task is to inspire me. Once I'm inspired, you have me, you have my attention. The next step for you is, are you able to protect what you put inside me? Are you willing to spend more time? Because you have to intensify the feelings you've generated. And once those feelings turn into emotions, I become attached to you. Because I can't find similar inspiration elsewhere, except through you. And that inspiration catches me. And now that you have me, it's your job to protect it. Now, is it true that you may turn out to be a charlatan? Absolutely. Is it true that you may turn out to be the opposite of a charlatan? Maybe. Is it also true that after a while you will no longer care for how I feel, but you will demand reflection, understanding from me? Yes. Will I disappoint you? Yes. Will there come a point where I become saturated of your presence? Yeah, I don't want to look at you anymore. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't really care what you've done for me. None of those things matter. Because for the first time I come to understand, I'm at a place where I need to learn on my own. It has nothing to do with you anymore. So you're dealing with a whole host of complexities. I mean, if, for example, people say Jesus was God, and I have no reason to believe that, but let's just say he was, all he could do, despite being God, was to just gather 12 lousy disciples, all of whom betrayed him. He tried stories, it didn't work. He tried magical tricks, that didn't work. He tried just being linear, telling them directly, nothing worked. So even though Jesus was at the right place to communicate, his disciples weren't. And if your next question is, well, how do you create the right time for you and I to meet and things flow well or mesh well? I don't know. Luck. You guys are so serious. Kendra? Olivia?
You said that things are connected.
For someone who sees the connectedness of things, yes, things are connected. For those who see fragmentation, then no. It's very easy for us to sit in this class and talk about racism. It's not very difficult. Blacks are this, browns are this, whites are that. Easy, simple. But to connect it to human nature, to connect it to greed, to connect it to power, the hierarchy created in society, it becomes enormously complicated. Things are no longer as simple. Malcolm X was very, very simple at the beginning. Who's the devil? The white man. In maturity, he no longer sees the white man as evil. He becomes really, really complicated. So much so that his own people didn't like him. So the less connected you see things to be, the simpler your life. I mean, look, you're a young woman. In a couple of days, you're going to run into a young punk. And he's going to say hi, and you're going to say hi back. And then there is instinct kicks in, and you're attracted. Simple. But if you were to be a bit more mature and say, so where do you live? Who do you live with? How are your parents? How much do you drink? Do you smoke? Do you have money? Are you done with school? All of a sudden you realize, well, you're asking a whole host of questions. Why? Because you think about your future. Not just the immediate present, but 20 years down the line, and whether or not your time is worthy of this man, or this man is worthy of your time. So the more connectedness, Terry? Dagan?
How do you prepare mentally for something?
So, because I don't really know the intention behind your question, all I hear is, how do you prepare for an earthquake, for example? Okay. So, my father is not well. Am I intellectually preparing myself for his passing? Absolutely. Am I looking at mortuaries, cemeteries to buy a plot of land? Yes. Am I thinking about buying a bulldozer from Amazon and digging a hole in the backyard? Yeah. I mean, I don't really want to pay like $40,000 for a 6x3, and that's how much it costs. So remember, you guys thought that life is expensive. Just wait till you die. Okay? And so there are two parts to this. There is the intellectual aspect of it, the mental part, where you look down into the future and you say, okay, A, B, C is going to happen. And though you may get teary-eyed once in a while, the emotions have not yet kicked in because it's not there yet. The event hasn't taken place. All you're doing is thinking about it. Okay? So that's your intellectual body. That there's a part of you that is just mental. You think about things, reflect about things. It may cause fear a little bit, anxiety a little bit, irritation a little bit, but it's just mental. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to feel. Then my father will die. While thinking, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to get depressed. I'm not going to cancel my classes. And I'm certainly not going to think about my own mortality. Okay? When he dies, I will cry. Then I'm going to go to Roseville, see my mom cry, which is going to bother me some more. Okay? Now what has happened is my thoughts and my emotions have meshed well together. Okay? So one of the things about teacher-student relationship is initially all the student can do is feel. The teacher is there to also think. Once in a while, inject some thoughts into the relationship. Okay? So how do you prepare? You can't, except mentally. And then you wait for the actual event to happen. Then emotions are going to come. Once emotions come, your mental faculties will be paralyzed. You will lose control, kind of like getting drunk. Okay? Then you have to wait until the dust settles. And depending on what the event is, it can generate a sort of set of reflections that go against the flow of life. If I was to give you an example, it would be maybe just a life story of the Buddha. He thinks about death, he thinks about old age, he thinks about sickness, but he just thinks about them. Then for some strange, tragic reason, not only does he think about them, one day he feels it. So much so that thinking becomes paralyzed. All he is a bundle of emotions. And he takes those emotions to his father. And he comes to realize that it doesn't really matter what his father is saying. It doesn't satisfy him. And for the first time, he finds himself without a father. metaphorically speaking. And the shock is so much that he goes into the desert or some forest, only to realize that other people are enjoying having a dream here, having an out-of-body experience there. They enjoy being drunk once in a while. But he doesn't like that. He says, I'm really here to understand. I have felt enough. I really want to understand my emotions and how they're connected to life itself. And what you realize is that when the emotions kick in, your life doesn't go well. When the reflection kicks in, accompanied with the emotions, your life really, really won't go well. And then you have to wait for a long, long time, kind of like going back to what we were talking about earlier. The yes man and the no man. You have to wait for a long time for the dust to settle, for you to understand the emotions, understand the reflections, and how society and politics are involved in it. But if you're a boxer, and if you know you're going to fight, you're going to be in the boxing ring. And I think if you know that an event is coming, you can walk into the boxing ring with Mike Tyson, but to some extent you know what's going to happen. You're going to get your head demolished a little bit. You know, you're going to get spanked, you're going to get beaten up, but you're prepared for that. Your abs are a little tougher, stronger, your chin is a little tougher, stronger, and that's how you prepare. It doesn't mean you won't experience pain, you will, just not as much. Terry? Yeah.
Is it good to remember things? Like memories with other people?
The word insan is Arabic. It comes from the word nosiya, which means forgetful. The biggest chapter in the Quran, the Bible of the Muslims, is Surah Baqarah, or the cow. It has 200, if I'm not mistaken, 86 chapters. It doesn't say anything pleasant, or not too many things pleasant about being a human being. We are born to forget, and we forget for good reasons. And just in case you want to remember, the first thing you have to ask is, well, what is the reason that you want to remember something? Okay, let me give you an example. Imagine I've had a broken past, that my father wasn't there, and if he was, he would push me around all the time. My mom wasn't there, and if she was, she wouldn't really care for me at all. So most often I would sit in my room and ask, why the hell was I born in the first place? Okay. And I realized the people that I need to trust during my formative years, 0 to about 10 or 11 or 12, they're garbage, they're no good. Okay. So I try to be as self-sufficient as possible. But regardless, I am broken. Now, I can't survive life, brokenness, being completely broken. It doesn't work that way. Okay? You can't come to class always being exhausted. I mean, I used to work graveyard shift for a number of years, and I thought that my body would adjust. The body never adjusts. Okay? And nothing in your life works well because you're always exhausted. So when you're broken, since living life and surviving life is going to be nearly impossible, something about our organism says, forget it. Push it down into a closet that you can't see. I mean, look at the way you keep your room. There are moments you say, you know what, my room is just filled with garbage. And what do? Well, you're not going to spend 10 hours cleaning it. You're just going to pack up and put everything in a closet. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. That's what happens to us. Then I go out with her, then I go out with her, then I go out with him, then I go out with him. And I say, maybe I should go out with a lot of different people. And then there comes a point where I say, nothing is working for me. And the reason I say this is because I look myself in the mirror, I realize I'm getting old, I'm getting sicker, weaker, uglier, smellier, and I need to make some changes to my life. Like any person who's addicted to anything that is forcing their life to devolve into trash. Then I say, I need to change. but I don't know where to begin. I don't even know what my problem is. And there is a reason why I don't know what my problem is, because I pushed it down at the age of 5 or 6 or 7. I can no longer see it or find it or feel it. So out of desperation, I talk to people, or maybe I just go seek therapy. And what the therapist does is, like, a butcher or a cook. Indians in Hindu tradition, they liken the human being to an onion. As you age, you have all these layers to you. And a good therapist, what they do is they remove one layer after another, okay, until they get to the issue. And they say, after like a year or two, or maybe a day or two, you get to realize there is a reason why none of your relationships have worked. There is a reason why you don't save money. There is a reason why your life is junk. It always goes back to when you were 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. You couldn't trust anyone. You couldn't love anyone. There was no stability. And every time anyone who comes into your life to create some stability, you get rid of it because you don't know what it looks like. And you're frightened by it. That you may have it, then it may be taken away. So you say, why even create it if it's going to be taken away? I'm just going to destroy it myself. Okay? And so what happens is your therapist will drag the hidden parts of you out. Now, you may think it's fun. It is true that you're in therapy to be healed, but it's not fun to see things that your organism has pushed down to forget. It's not fun. And very much like any alcoholic, you will seek therapy for 2 days and you will run away from it for a month. Then you realize, but this time, something about you has opened up. You see things now. It's no longer like before where you can just forget and just go about your life. Something about you has opened up. You've accepted certain parts of you. That, Olivia, you can't live like this anymore. And the sooner you catch this, of course, the less layered, the smaller the onion, the later you catch this, the more layers you have, the more attached you are to those layers. There was a scene in the TV show Sopranos, where, I don't know what his name is, Tony Montana. He goes to the therapist and she tells him, the reason why you're a scumbag is because of your mom. And he says, I'm Italian. We don't speak about our mothers this way. So shut your mouth, And the therapist kind of gets scared a little bit, but he says, listen, you're here to be healed. I'm just telling you, your mom is just not right in the head. And it takes him a long time to get over the cultural aspect, the emotional aspect that creates a good amount of attachment, respect, dignity. So he has to overcome all of that to one day look at his mom and say, man, she's really no good. But it took him some time. And we're talking about movies. Okay. In real life, it's very, very, very different because they don't speak to us about the kind of loneliness and depression and isolation and the feelings of abandonments that come about. And they're horrifying. Okay. And let's say you've been seeing this therapist and now you slowly begin to remember. Every time, remember, there is this tornado of emotions that come your way and you get drowned. And it's painful. But we're not the sort of animals that enjoy pain. So somehow you and your therapist must have a really good relationship where you become a good companion to pain, that you're able to tolerate it. Kind of like Sigmund Freud, when he had his cancer of the jaw, what happened to him is he did coke. It's something he experimented with at the age of 15 or 16 when he was working with other psychologists. But one of the requirements that he had for his doctors giving him coke was, just give me enough to numb the pain a little because I need to continue my work. I don't want to be addicted. Okay? And there are mixed stories about what he went through. That's besides the point. So what will happen is that what you've come to realize is that the more you think about your past, the more you study your past, the more you process your past, the freer you become. But it takes work, it takes effort, it takes sacrifice, and it is painful. And because we're not the sort of creatures who enjoy pain, in as much as you desire to change, you also desire pleasure, to have fun, to laugh, to have a good time, to drink, to have sex, all sorts of things, okay? Now, whenever pleasure dominates you, you forget. Now, what happens is there is the pain, you're aware of it, you're also aware that you're about to go out with your friends and get drunk. You also know it's a shitty thing to do, right? If you're unable to manipulate, and this is where effort comes in or will comes in, whenever you have to exercise will, okay, imagine for a moment you're sitting home watching TV. The sort of animals, pleasure-driven animals that we are, you have the remote in your hand and every second you change the channel. When you get really, really exhausted of not being able to focus on a single show, then what happens is you say, Olivia, goddammit, summon up the will. Just focus on one show. Even if there are scenes that are boring, stick with it. So whenever you're dealing with rising up and doing something, you have to go against the flow of being lazy, of being forgetful, of being able to see things, okay? And it takes a lot of effort to actually do what you actually want to do, which is, I want to stay with the pain. I don't want to get drunk. Okay? Which means that you have to, when your friends call, you can't pick up the phone. Just in case there is this desire, you have to find tools, mental resources, emotional resources, to kind of combat this force that's coming towards you. And if you're lucky, it works. If you're not so lucky, you will forget, only to remember again at a future date. So we forget for good reasons. Can I tell you a story? And then one of my very, very, very old students, 1998, she was going to Singapore, or Malaysia, to see some stuff. And she had invited some of the classmates, and she said, Amir, do you mind coming to my gathering? I mean, I won't see you for like another couple of years. Sure, I'll come. So I stood outside the window when I got to the house, to their house, and they were playing pool, and they were laughing, they were having a good time, they were drinking. And I said, oh, shucks, I'm walking to, something unpleasant. So I knock on the door because I promised. I go in, and she opens the door. And all of a sudden, she says, hold on. She doesn't even invite me in. She tells her parents, the classmates, can you guys remove the drinks? Can you turn down the music? And can you just sit on the sofa? And then they all do. At a certain point, she walks to me and whispers into my ears, I don't like having you here. You ruined my party. Now, whatever her image of me is, I come to class, I talk about this stuff. It's relatively serious. There's a good amount of dark, sardonic humor, but it is serious. And it forces you to think. And it's not a very pleasant way to live your life, right? Now, she's about to go to Malaysia and have a good time. She sees me, she begins to think. And she asks me very respectfully to leave, and I do. And that's how painful remembering is. And that's what we do to forget some of the things that we know and some of the things we see. So it's not an easy thing. So just in case once in a while you find me saying that Jesus had lousy disciples, they weren't really lousy. They were really, really good. It's just difficult to remember. And to stay with the remembering. It's too much. Okay. Wolf? Spike? Anyone else before we... I'm sorry? Disappointment? Forgive me, Richard. Um, I don't know how much you guys like this class, but when he brought his companion and his child, he was running around laughing, and there wasn't really much I could do except to just watch this kid going back and forth. Now, those of you who are not parents and you came here really to just sit back and listen and enjoy your time here, reflecting and thinking about things, you'd probably say to yourself, why did he have to bring his wife and his kid here? You know, I woke up at 6 or 7 in the morning to come to class and to listen to something, but we're not doing anything. I should have just stayed in bed. And Andrew, of course, and some of the people who are not even in this class, they say, well, especially here, you know, just came here for this question, but they couldn't really do much. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, because we are future oriented, you know, and there is a good amount of your past that's unresolved, dreams and hopes unrealized, narratives you're working towards, that's in the future. You wake up in the morning and you want to come to class in hopes of finding the class somewhat interesting. That's expectation. That's what we do. We expect things. After class, I have to call my parents. I expect my father to pick up the phone. Just in case he doesn't, life goes against my expectation. And depending on my relationship to the expectation, if it's really, really intense, such as my father being dead, well, that's grief. That's not something I expected. That's loss, something I didn't expect. Even though I brought my clothes to go to Roseville, I'm not going to. I'm a little tired, okay? And all of a sudden I realized I have to change plans and go to Roseville. So if you don't have a future, if you don't have a past, and not having a past or future, I can't say living in the present because that's for hippies and that's stupid, okay? If you want to be a healthy human being, you need to have a future. You need to be future oriented, either resolving issues from the past, you know, or say you want to be a dentist 20 years ago, it didn't happen, but now you're working towards it. So it's healthy to be future oriented. Disappointment only happens when things don't go your way. You know, imagine there was a note on the door saying class is canceled. You know, you'll be disappointed. Not so much because there's no class. You took the trouble to come here. You had to shower. You had to dress like you're dead. You know. Now, is it true what Eckhart Tolle and people like him say? Live in the present? I don't think so. I think he's just stupid. You know, he's found a niche in life, lots of people to dupe, and people are gullible enough to say, yes, I want to live in the present. Disappointment is just kind of like breathing and eating and bathrooming, which is part of life. Sometimes you eat food that tastes bad. Sometimes you eat food that tastes good. You know, disappointment is eating a food that just tastes bad. Sometimes just things don't go our way. Now, the funny thing about modernity is that we demand so much from life, and the assumption is life owes us because it's me. You know, I'm a 60-year-old man. I come to class. People owe respect to me. They need to sit back and listen, and that's stupid. I can't control what other people do. You know, that's, you know, the best lesson about how to deal with the ups and downs of life is Stoic philosophy. If you're allergic to Eastern philosophy, Stoic philosophy that comes out of Greece, it's a relatively good philosophy of life. And the only thing you can really control in life are your emotions. There is nothing else. But to control your emotions, you have to stand outside of yourself, not to allow the emotions to get you drunk, get you depressed, get you disappointed, get you angry, get you this, get you that. You must always approach life reflectively. It doesn't mean absence of emotions. It just means there is a good amount of balance of emotions as well as reflection. And you have to kind of look at life as a joke. That's the only way you can survive it. You're always on the outside looking at life and laughing. And it's not because anything about life is funny. It's very serious. There's just nothing you can do about it. Some things are earned. Some things are earned and some things just happen. Once in a while, I sit in my office and I YouTube soccer players who just die on the field. I mean, they eat well, they exercise every day, they're young, they're healthy, everything about their life is beautiful. As they're chasing after the ball, they just drop dead. Okay? It's not because they're overweight, it's not because they've had a lot of eclairs, or sugar. It's just accidental, they just die. It's just random. There are things that you earn. You don't exercise, you eat bad food, you smoke, you drink, and then you have some disease. That is something that you have earned. There are certain things in life that just happen. These are organic forms of disappointment, and you can't do much about them except to accept them. And then there are those things that you actually have some hand in it, and you could change the flow of life by just being able to see certain things and change certain things. But that takes work. And we usually allow ourselves to assume that we're exempt from this. I never thought in a million years that I'm going to have a triple bypass. Here it is. So yeah, disappointment is like anything else. It's not fun. Yes, Dagan, your hand is up. Andrew?
What's the noble lie?
Noble lie? What is that? I never heard it.
I was thinking about the little one. Right? I guess it was the concept that censorship.
Oh. Does Plato actually have like a place that it's called Noble Lie? Yeah.
The notion that like a really talented poet could make the most horrible thing really good, and then there'd be things.
I think if you look at the religious traditions, at least the life of the founders, Muhammad, the Buddha, Jesus, Moses, once you turn them into an ism, you take the passion out and all you have are skeletons. And so it's very easy for you to raise your hand and say, I'm a Christian. And if someone asks, well, did you leave your parents at the age of 12? I don't need to do that because Jesus is my savior. End of story. You can't talk anymore because they'll wait for you outside. I think whenever anything turns into a doctrine, whenever you remove passion from anything, because passion is wild. It's mysterious, it's enigmatic, it's wild, and it doesn't really care who's there. And the best people who can at least initially exercise passion, creativity, and honesty so well are kids. As you age and you engage in the social and political world, if you want to survive it, you have to learn the way other people talk. I mean, sometimes I am on these hiring committees. We hire deans or faculty. It's such a joke because all these people know what the buzzwords are, and they come to these meetings. There are like 5 or 6 of us sitting, and everybody's taking notes and everybody's engaged. And I look at this chap and I say, another shitty human being who's going to get hired. He's not going to do anything except to get paid. I've forgotten your question, but the best thing I can do justice to your question would be this, if I remember it well. Old relationships, romantic kinds, the only reason they survive is because you're great poets. Because you have to lie in them to survive. Not only lie to yourself, but to lie to your companion. For good reasons. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, your kids can't draw for shit, and yet they bring their artwork to you. Oh my God, Picasso. Your wife or your husband can't cook. How's my food, honey? Oh, I've never had such a beautiful, thank you so much. You know, then you go to the bathroom and puke. We do a lot of things because we have no choice. I mean, that's what life is. Life just holds you in bondage. I think Karl Marx in many ways was wrong. And I think if you really want to find salvation down here, if you're a musician, you can find your promised land by being on the stage and playing guitar for 2 hours. When you walk away from the stage, it's the tables and chairs of life. And the more you're in tune with music, the less you're going to enjoy real life. That's how it's always been, you know. So if there are any creativities to you, that's the only way you can be relatively honest, because that's where your soul comes out. Okay? The rest of life is just transaction. It's like the essays I have to read. It's all for grade. So. Anyone else? Terry? Was it something I said? Something I did? Was it about the last class? I love the coffee. And I like you. I don't love you just yet, but I like you. That's a good start. What time is it? Oh, Janai, yeah, Janai.
It's time to go.
10:18. I'm sorry to have kept you. It's good to see all of you. Take care. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You too. Bye. Bye. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you.
You guys look good.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Bye. Thank you. Amir. Jeez. Thank you. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question the right way.
From this special experience.
No, good. Thank you.
Good to see like different
Yeah.
different interactions.
Well, you're welcome anytime. Thank you. Okay, take care. Bye. Bye.
Sorry for hijacking.
No, it's all good. It's all
We need
good.
to be a bit more calm so my wife can stay.
Hi.
We just learned how to kiss. Thank
Oh, it's great. Take care, Alan.
you very much. I appreciate that.
Of course. Of course. Thank you. Matthew. Have a good time tonight.
I might not go. We'll just make a fool of myself.
Well, you can go have a good time, just not drink as much.
I'm not a very big drinker. I usually try to avoid it.
Yeah.
But I could save it for next class, but I was kind of curious about the idea of sort of in the question I was asking at the beginning about how we sort of have this sort of voyeuristic fascination with like journalism when it comes to viewing
Yeah.
poverty and struggle of other people and how we can sit from our relatively wealthy nation and be like, oh man, that's there's kind of a sick voyeuristic element to it. So I was curious what you thought about that.
When Uh, the first few weeks after my surgery, I ate really, really well. It was fresh in my mind. Everybody was worried and concerned, and I was concerned, and so they were all very attentive. I would walk every day. But what happens is that in time, you just forget. It becomes less intense, less interesting, less vital. Uh, and I think journalism is very much the same. Initially, when you start, you're fresh, things impact you, and you fight to be honest, to write honestly, to think honestly, to ask the right questions. But as time goes on and it just becomes the way you make your living, you basically become an observant as opposed to a participant. Ask your question next time we gather, because Albert Camus wrote this novel called The Plague. We can talk about it. And it's very much like that.
Okay. Well, have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you, Matthew.
Don't scare too many children.
No, no.